What you see is not a grammatical error. Debt collectors pay. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I never like paying debt collectors. And if you hang around long enough, I'm going to show you how you can start getting debt collectors to paying you. Disclaimer: legal information is not the same as legal advice. ProDebt Solutions never provides legal advice, and ProDebt Solutions is not the legal representative for our clients, nor are we practicing attorneys. What you will hear is entertaining and educational in nature and is for information purposes only. This information is provided to help users safely cope with their own legal needs. Content, forms, and templates from us does not constitute legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is created. Consult an attorney before using content or commencing in any legal action. This information is to be used at your own risk. We are not bar licensed attorneys who are officers of the court. We never give legal advice. Under consumer protection, when dealing with a debt collector, there are three three possible laws that they may violate. They'll get one or maybe all three. The first is called the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Then there's the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So let's take a look at how they could potentially violate the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Now, underneath the TCPA, it says it restricts telephone solicitation and the use of automatic dialing systems, artificial or pre-recorded voice messages, SMS text messages, and fax. Now, the law also says that that they must obtain prior express written consent from the consumer before auto dialing. So that means before they can call you, they have to have in writing your permission. So if they don't, then they violate the TCPA. And under that, it carries a penalty between $500 and $1,500, and that would be per call, per text message, or per fax. Now, since 2007 to 2009, there were potentially about 40 lawsuits that were filed like each year on TCPA. Now, there was a little bit of a boost in 2010, and then in 2014, TCPA violations were like the #1 complaint with the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission. And so there was some 2,336 lawsuits, and I'm pretty sure that for 2015 that number probably tripled. I don't have exact figures on it, but you know, this could potentially put money in your pocket just for a debt collector calling you. Now, second law, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Underneath this law, it limits the behavior and the actions of the debt collector that's trying to collect the debt from for another person or an entity, and the law also restricts the method and the means by which they can contact the debtor. So and those are like $1,000 violations. So I want to show you a couple of examples. For starters, when you dealing with a debt collector, if you don't get a phone call, they're going to send you a letter. And in the letter, let's take a closer look at it. There's potential violations in it. Now, this is only half of a letter. That's I'm only got the snapshot of the top portion of it, but there's still a bottom portion that has a few violations in it. But let's take a look at just some of a few of them at the very top of the letter. All right, for starters, underneath 15 USC, and USC stands for the United States Code 1692E2A, there has to be a relationship to have an account. So this is a false representation. As you can see in red, there's an account number. Okay, there's no written agreement, between you and that debt collector that should establish an account number. Second, underneath 15 USC 1692G(a), written notice has to be sent within 5 days from communication. So from when that first phone call comes in, or you notice for those that monitor your credit reports, the first time that this item appears on your credit report, there has to be a letter in your mailbox within 5 days, from that action, or else that's a violation. And each one of these violations are like $1,000 a piece. Now, going a little further, looking at 15 USC 1692E2A, it says this is a false representation of the amount. You never owe a debt collector. Okay, that's one thing I got to get you to understand. You never owe a debt collector. So if you have a debt collector that's communicating with you or have communicated with you in the past, you need to get with me as soon as possible so that we can address that. And under 15 USC 1692 F1, it says the collection of any amount that includes interest, any fees, charges, or expense and incidentals to the principal obligation, meaning if they add anything extra onto the original amount that was owed by your original creditor, that's a potential violation. Now, here's another violation. When debt collectors call you, their conduct and behavior on that phone, could bring on not only statutory damages, but it also could bring on punitive damages. And what punitive damages are is that this is what the court or the judge, should say, deemed that he needs to give them a slap on the wrist and show them that they did something wrong. Just like your child, when your child does something wrong, you punish them, you take the game away, you may not let them go outside, so they have to punish that particular lawbreaker. And this is intended to either reform them or to deter them, from doing some of what they've done to you and to others. So what I'd like to do is just quickly take a look at this short clip by ABC News, Diane Sawyer. I'm not sure exactly how old the clip is, okay, but let's take a quick look.
There are two words that send a shiver through the spines of hardworking Americans: debt collector. We learned today that complaints about abusive debt collectors have increased 17% since last year. And there are some outrageous new tactics they are using to get people to pay up. Here's Elizabeth Leamy to tell us about them.
Who do you think you are? Don't ever hang up a phone on me.
They threaten people's lives.
What are you? I am the
guy who's going to end your life. That's who I am.
And their families.
You did break the law, whether you admit to or not.
You gonna call me tomorrow and tell me whether or not I'm going to jail? What?
Thomas,
I need to, I've got 2 kids. I've got to make arrangements.
All in the name of money.
They treat everybody like deadbeats. You're lying and try to get the money because that's my job.
Buffalo News reporter Fred Williams spent 3 months working undercover as a collector.
They trained you to do illegal things?
Yeah.
The top illegal collection activities reported to the Federal Trade Commission included collectors harassing debtors with continuous calls.
You call me 7 times.
Using obscene language.
Go motherfucker back to Africa or something.
And making threats they can't carry out.
you can call back within 24 hours to issue that warrant out for your arrest.
A Pennsylvania debt collector is even accused of setting up this fake courtroom to trick people into paying.
Clearly we need more enforcement because these are long-standing abuses and the complaints are going up and not down.
ACA International, trade group for the collection industry, says collectors are a vital part of our economy and that complaints are up because debt is up, not because collectors are doing anything differently. Heather Thomas disagrees.
They are trained to manipulate you into being so scared, so afraid that you'll do anything.
She sued over a company's illegal tactics and collected money from the collector.
So how do you get them to stop, Eli?
All you have to do, ask for the name and address of the collection company, write them a letter saying don't call me anymore, and by law, they must stop.
So that's the law.
That's it.
Thank you so much. Good to see you here.
Now, everybody saw the video, and let's break it down a little bit. There was definitely profanity in that conversation. Okay, that's not professional. Professionally, you never talk to any of your customers or potential customers with profanity. Deception. There was deception by the debt collector setting up a mock courtroom and having those debtors to come down and sit in there as if that was a judge, if that was a court law of order. There was definitely harassment. There were threats of legal action. I think one of them might have told this lady that she would go to jail. I didn't quite hear him say that she would go to jail, but when she began asking, hey, I need to make arrangements, You know, it seemed they must have led into that particular conversation, and from what we all heard, we definitely know that there was some fear. And those are all violations underneath the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. That was the purpose of it being set up like that. Now, don't want you to just take my word. Let's take a closer look. And if you type in to Google FDCPA, you're going to get the full Fair Debt Collection Practices rules, the complete act. So now under 806, under harassment or abuse, it says a debt collector may not engage in any conduct, the natural consequence of which is to harass, oppress, or abuse any person in connection with the collection of a debt without limiting the general application of the foregoing. The following conduct is a violation of this section. Now, under number 1, it says the use or a threat of use of violence or other criminal means to harm the physical person, the reputation, or property of a person. Number 2, the use of obscene or profane language or language, the natural consequence of which is to abuse the hearer or the reader. These are all violations. Now, there's still a couple more steps with this, but I just wanted to give you guys just the gist of the violations. And so these, under this act, this is another way that a debt collector could potentially put money in your pocket. Now, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, we had probably about 2 weeks ago a webinar that was done, and if you would like to get a copy of it, get back with me and I can definitely get you the full replay of that. But we went into more detail about the Fair Credit Reporting Act and violations, but I felt it necessary to touch it since you know, a debt collector will be reporting information on your credit report. So underneath the FCRA, it was enacted to promote the accuracy, the fairness, and privacy of consumer information contained in the files of the consumer reporting agencies. Now, we use the term of the credit bureaus, and I hate to use that word, so I try to make sure in my conversation that I say the credit reporting agencies. I don't always say consumer reporting agency, but I definitely say credit reporting agencies. And we have to stop giving those guys power, because when you think of bureau, you think of something to deal with the government. They're not part of the government. They're multi-million-dollar, multi-billion-dollar corporations, you know. So they're not part of the government. Now, the intent, what this was intended for, was to protect the consumers from willful and negligent inclusion of inaccurate information in their credit reports. And if you combine the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and the FCRA, it forms a powerful group or foundation of consumer laws in the United States. All right, so some of the credit reporting errors that could come up underneath the Fair Credit Reporting Act would be unauthorized inquiries. Now, there are debt collectors that will pull your credit as if they're a creditor, as if you filled out an application or gave them some type of permission to pull your credit. That's a no-no. Inaccurate reporting. You know, once they are notified that you know, that you're disputing an account and they fail to correct it, now that's looked at as inaccurate reporting. And then erroneous information would be things like dates, open dates on the accounts, closed dates, monthly reporting activity. Those would be erroneous information, and it's all violations of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Now, as far as compensation or private right of action, here's an example. Underneath the TCPA, the very first settlement check that our group got was for $2,000, dated 11/10/2014. So as you can see, we've only been at this process for just a short time. And this came about because the debt collector called the consumer, and actually it was a wrong number deal. The consumer had that number for some time, informed the debt collector that they were actually calling the wrong party. And I guess because they were looking for a guy, and this happened to be a guy answering the phone, they figured maybe he was playing a game, and they continued to call. And ultimately, they didn't collect any money from him on the debt, but he got $2,000, as a settlement from them. Then to start the year out, there's a check, and actually this one was made out to me. This was some phone calls from a debt collector, and this was an account that they were alleging that I owed them some money on, and the tables got turned, and they ended up cutting me a check for $3,800. And we've got another scenario where this gentleman received about a handful of text messages from an entity, and he ended up, it took a little time with this case, but he ended up getting like $6 grand as a settlement. Not bad. So, just going to show you that under the 3 consumer laws that they can violate them, and with proper direction and instruction, execution, we can get these guys to pay off for their errors. Now, as far as apps, there are a couple of apps that we recommend that you get it for those that have smartphones. The first is, your call log on your phone only holds so many calls, and then those calls get bumped out. Well, we recommend getting Current Caller ID by the White Pages. Now, it's a free app. I mean, all of these probably have some type of pro version, but you only need to really focus on the free version of it. And with the free version, what it does, it'll go back a much longer time than your normal call log will do, and keep record of different calls. So when you have debt collectors that are calling you, we recommend that you get a sheet of paper and you write down the phone numbers, the times, and the dates of each call, and keep, if you have multiple debt collectors that are calling you, keep a separate list for each one, and make sure that at the time that the call comes in, or the very next time that later that day before you close your day out, that you take and you log in those calls. And that would, that's keeping it on paper. Now, this app is great because what it does, it catalogs all of these calls, and it allows you to really just kind of be able to pull it up by doing a search and punching in that number, and it groups it all together on one thread, and it shows you every call. And what you can do is you can take screenshots of it. You can forward that to us. You can put it in, let's say, your Google Drive or your Dropbox account, up in the cloud, to make sure that it's protected, just in case, God forbid, something should happen to your phone. You don't want to just take and leave everything solely up to this app or in your phone and have something happen to it. So once they stop calling, you want to get those calls to us so that we can begin processing your claim. Now, under recording calls, there's 2 apps that I've used and 2 apps that we recommend. One is called Auto Call Recorder, or you may find it in the Play Store or Apple Store as Automatic Call Recorder. It's the same thing as long as it has that logo. Great recording device. Is one that I use. And what you want to do when you have that first conversation with the debt collectors, that's definitely a call that you want to record, and you want to make sure that you don't own up to the debt. Now, these guys are going to be recording their calls, so you make sure you don't own up to the debt. When they tell you about this account, and I know you're going to be very familiar with it, you tell them, I don't have a clue, I don't remember that account, but if you send me something in writing, I'll do my research. Now, you never tell them I'm going to give you a call back, and if you do, if you make that mistake and do, don't worry about it, because your intent is not to call them back. Your intent is to get that paper, to forward a copy of that to us, and to let us walk you through as far as how to process it, because every step that we take is going to be part of what's setting them up, for you to get some type of compensation out of it. Now, the app to the right, that's another one. It's called Call Recorder. Call Recorder. Excellent app. That was the first one that I started out with, and it seems like the next phone that I got didn't really work with it, so I ended up switching over to Auto Call Recorder. So between those 2, I'm pretty sure you can find that, or you can find something comparable to it. You don't necessarily have to use these two apps, or really should say three apps, so as long as you've got something that's comparable to it, it would definitely be of value to you. Now, if you're being sued by a debt collector, and this happens, and this could be not just a debt collector, but by anybody. If you're getting sued behind a debt, give us a call. I mean, you're not in this fight by yourself, and I would strongly encourage you to fight. Okay, you have to fight. Now, we've had clients that we've worked with that have gone to court, and they've defeated the debt collector. It's been for small amounts, okay, but it doesn't matter about the amount. It's the fact that they didn't get a judgment. Their wages are not going to be garnished, and if you live in a garnishable state, you know, they realize that they have an upper hand on you, especially if you don't go to court. Pay attention to everything. If you have any collection debts, you need to especially, you know, be conscious that these guys could, you know, take you into court. If you start getting solicitations in the mail from attorneys saying that, you know, hey, if you're looking to file a bankruptcy, you need to contact the court in the area that you live in, the county that you live in, and find out if there's any cases against you, because that's usually your first sign. Sometimes you'll get those solicitations before the actual sheriff comes in and serve you. But if you happen to have this going on or something, get back with us as soon as possible, because time is of the essence as far as getting help with your case. So contact us, and we're going to show you how you can take and turn the tables on the debt collectors. Debt collectors are not used to consumers standing up for their rights. Consumers for so long have pretty much just given in, you know, and it's been because of lack of education to creditors, debt collectors, and tons of other entities, because they just didn't know what their rights were. And so in our program, we're gonna educate you. I mean, this webinar is one way. We've got plenty more that we're going to be doing. We've got plenty that we've done that you can get replays on that will educate you as far as like understanding your rights and your position as a consumer and how much power that you actually have. So turning the table on these guys, they're not looking for us to fight them. You know, court cases, my clients have gone in, you know, they asked one lady, you know, hey, how do you want to make payment to us today? She says, well, my intent was not to pay you. Well, that threw that guy off of his, you know, balance there, because he was expecting her to just, you know, make some type of arrangement to cower down and just pay because they were outside of the court. Wasn't actually in the court, but they were outside of the court. And when that didn't happen, and there was a little bit of resistance and some questions I asked and some great points, you know, threw up, the guy decided to drop the case. He realized that that wasn't the consumer that he should go into court with. You know, it was somebody who knew a little something, and so he was really eager to drop that case. Now, I'm not sure if you got invited to this presentation, or even if you're looking at this on YouTube, you know, by me. My name is Charles. But if I didn't invite you, get back with the person who did. If you're watching this on a YouTube replay or replay from one of our webinar systems, you know, feel free to contact me. If it's on YouTube, it's going to have all my contact information, you know, in the description. But if you've got these scenarios, if you have any questions about anything, you know, get with us. You can get with the representative that actually directed you to this information. Ask questions. Get the help that you need. Get a check. I can tell you, once you get a check, one check in your hand, doesn't matter if it's $500, that's gonna make you feel good. It's gonna give you a different outlook on this entire process and standing up for your rights. And when you stand up for your rights, dealing with a debt with a debt collector or a creditor, you know, it's going to help you in other areas to stand up and recognize, you know, other things that you're potentially throwing away money, or maybe you're not standing up for yourself as effectively as you can. So once again, debt collectors, they pay, and they pay very well.